My name is Will Wedig. I'm excited to be moderating this panel here with this incredibly credentialed panel. So just to kick it off, I'm just going to start right down here with Bryan. Tell me a little bit about when a witness recounts and what it is. So it's a documentary. It deals with and I'll let you tell me what the film is, but I'll just set it up. It's a film about a group of young men who were unjustly imprisoned for what, 36 years?
Yes. So,
right?
When a Witness Recants is a film about the Harlem Park Three, which at the time, 1983, were three teenagers who were unjustly convicted of murder, resulting in the loss of 36 years of their life.
So you were a cinematographer on it. It's a lot. It's intermixed with archival, or what is? You were following them now, or how does the movie take place? How does the documentary take place?
So yes, there is. Director Don Porter did utilize archival in the making of the film, but I think it has several parts. It's looking at the investigation and what was unjust about it, and then also how they are doing now, how these now grown men are adjusting to freedom. And without giving too much of it away, premieres on Tuesday. I think.
What time? Sorry.
5:30 from the back. 5:30.
5:30. Do we know which theater?
Library.
5:30 Tuesday.
Yes. Right. Yes. But just also just trying to absorb life outside of prison. One thing that I learned making this film is that your life becomes what's told and what's provided for you. So it's interesting to see. You would think, once the shackles are off you, you're just going to run for the hills and, everything that you'd ever wanted to do. But you're limited on what you even know how to do because everything's been done for you and you've been limited in your freedom of choice. So now you're free and you're kind of questioning, like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And I want to turn now to Jackson, cinematographer from Seized. What's your film about? It also deals with the criminal justice system and sort of government overreach, let's say. What's Seized about?
Yeah, so Seized is about an unlawful raid on a newspaper in a small town of Marion, Kansas. And so it kind of explores the raid and all the events that led up to the raid. It's a small community of less than 2,000 people, so we really kind of explore all these different characters and all the things that led up to and how this raid came to be, and then the fallout of the raid as well, and kind of the implications of a raid, and exploring a little bit of how that pertains to the broader picture here in America, with things going on like with government overreach and abuse of power and stuff. So
well, that's not something that's in the headlines right now, is it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
And it all takes place now. I mean, this was a recent story, correct?
Yeah, so the raid happened a few years ago. So we were out there shortly after that raid happened and just got to work and got grounded ourselves in the community and tried to learn about what happened and learn more about these people. And yeah, so there's a lot of verite and interviews and also body cam footage from the police raid and surveillance footage and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a mix.
How did you find yourself and the director and the crews? How did the crew find themselves at the forefront of that, like at that moment, or did the story happen and then you followed up? How did the production go?
So like, how did we get involved in the story is what you're asking? Yeah. So the director and the rest of the great crew, we have some great crew here that worked on the film. We are most of us based in Kansas City. So this raid happened in a small town in the middle of Kansas. So it's just kind of a proximity thing. And the director was hearing about this raid on the radio and just decided to go out there and meet the editor of the newspaper, Eric, who his mother, Joanne, was the owner of the newspaper, and she died after the raid, shortly after the raids. And so she went out there and started to talk to him, and he gave her his blessing to tell the story. And so shortly afterwards, she gave me a call, and she's like, "Let's get out there." And we got there, and we started filming things and started trying to tell the story.
Yeah, fantastic. So looking over at Daysha and Davis, give me the title of your film one more time. It's the AI doc or How I Became an Apocaloptimist.
You got it.
Right. So what is an Apocaloptimist? What's
Well, I think that in the face of this crazy revolution that's happening in technology and all of the changes that we're all going to experience here, it's kind of about how do we become something new? How do we deal with this and not be destroyed by it, and hopefully be improved by it? And to do that, we have to sort of become something new. And that's where the idea of the title came from. The idea of the title itself came from a moment in an interview that you will see if you see the film on Tuesday. But we just, as soon as we heard that word, the director Daniel Rohr really latched onto it, and it sort of hung around until the very end, because we didn't have a title until the very end of the process.
Yeah, but it's Daysha, it's about a father, right, who's dealing with this.
Yeah,
I don't want to summarize your film for you.
No, that's Daniel Rohr, the director, and Charlie Tyrell. They were both having children at the same time. Their wives were both pregnant at the same time, and I think that we're looking at the AI issue through the lens of their children that were going to be born into this world where AI was something that they would never not know of, whereas like we all would remember a life without it. And I mean, I was born in the 80s, and I remember a life without the internet, but my sister doesn't. And I think that he was trying to figure out how to create a world in which he felt comfortable and safe that his kid would be born into, but that's not something that any of us can do. And I think as creatives, what we try to do is just ask all the questions and get all the information we can to figure out how to be comfortable with this. And that's basically the premise of the film is Daniel is interviewing every single person he can get his hands on who created this thing, who works in this tech, and lots of people who are just studying it, and journalists and things, and just trying to figure out like how do we move forward through this and with it, because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say that you have 2 films in the festival.
Yes.
You have another film in the next category.
Yeah,
Yep.
it premiered last night. Actually, it was a really good premiere. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Tell me about your other film. It's in the next category, correct?
Yeah, it's If I Go, Will They Miss Me? It's directed by Walter Thompson Hernández. It takes place in Nickerson Gardens in Watts, and it's about it's through the lens of a young boy who's about 13, and his father is like in and out of prison, but he, no matter who his father is, he still sees him as a hero. And so we use a lot of Greek mythology to describe his father. There's magical elements in it, but it's very, very grounded and real, and takes place in Watts. And it's about this son trying to connect with his father, who used to be, his father grew up and was, just a nerd, and he liked to draw, and then something happens and that changes kind of the trajectory of his life. And so because of that, he's unable to connect with his son, who is just like him when he was a kid. He's desperately trying to connect with him and just doing it completely wrong. And it just follows their story, and it's deep. It's a good watch, but bring your tissues.
Hey, who doesn't like a good cry sometimes, yeah. Right? So Jessica, tell me about your film, The Best Summer. It's a documentary that's sort of there's an interesting. Tell me the origin story of it, because it has an interesting backstory.
So we started cutting it in August, and so it was a very quick process. But I've worked with this director, Tamara Davis, over the years many times, and basically she's married to Mike D of the Beastie Boys. And during the fires, she was looking through these tapes and found some stuff that she'd shot at the Somersault Festival in 1996. And we opened the movie with literally that, kind of explaining to you what's happening. And she called me over in June, and she's like, is there a movie in here? Like, I think I have a movie here. Because basically, it sounds glamorous to go with your husband on tour, but it's really boring, you know. So like she took her camera and just shot a ton of stuff and all these interviews, and these are her friends. So she has these sort of very intimate interviews with Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth, or the Dave Grohl of Foo Fighters, and it's just like they're speaking completely disarmed, you know, because they don't even know. I mean, like literally at one point, Dave Grohl's like, "Wait, what are you doing?" And they're like, "We're bored." You know, and that's like the origin of how this started to take shape, you know. And we tried many things, but like in the end, we just stayed in 1996. Like if you go and watch the film, the interviews are only the things that she shot in 96, and then we tried to create this sort of structure, this very loose structure. And it was also a sort of an exercise in restraint in editorial, like, because I usually do highly stylized stuff and it's kind of really explosive. And this was, we're just gonna sit and we're gonna watch this entire concert. We're gonna watch this, we're gonna watch these interviews almost in their entirety and just live there. And it's kind of, I mean, to you guys' point, like it's refreshing. Nobody has a camera. Nobody, they're just enjoying their time and watching it. And it was like their best summer. Like, and it's just capturing this moment in time and you get to live there.
Were the artists ever like too honest in these moments that you had to like be careful not to put in to not upset them?
No. They, I mean, nothing was said that like was, but they're
Was
honest.
damning or anything?
No, but it was more like, you know, asking Dave Grohl. I mean, what we don't do is we contextualize a little bit, but we also leave it to the audience. Like you can go like do your research. Like this is right after the lead singer of Nirvana had died, like you know, and so like this is like Dave Grohl is now taking over this role that Kurt Cobain had, and he's nervous. He doesn't like being a lead, you know, and so he talks a little bit about that, and he talks about like not giving a journalist his soul, not giving him, you know, and like stuff that like you wouldn't tell a journalist, you know, but it's more candid, but it's not. It's still friends talking because like she's their buddy, you know, so it's more like that. And it's also interesting, she always has these like little questions she asks at the top of like, what book did you read, or are you reading? And everyone's reading a book, which is like, you know, unusual now. So it's just little things like that you just like remember snippets of like what it was like to live in 1996.
Yeah, but they're also a lot of those artists are a lot younger. You know, they're sort of maybe. I mean, what's the age range for them? They're all probably like 28 to 35, or
yeah. I mean, they said that they thought Sonic Youth was old because they were 30. Yeah, like, you know, like the Beastie Boys and stuff thought they were the old ones on tour. You know, so yeah, they were. I mean, Kathleen Hanna, Bikini Kill was like 20. About 20 years old, and it captures some really cute things. Like we just happened to catch the earliest flirtation of Kathleen Hanna and Adam Horowitz, who ended up married. They just celebrated their 30th anniversary, and like we have their first little flirtation on camera. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, you know, all of you are very well versed in documentaries. This is kind of for anybody. How do you guys balance? You know, like working in documentaries and working in film, it's always put through the lens of the human or the filmmaker. So how do you balance the authenticity of the final product with the subjective lens that you're putting things through? Because you're trying to reflect reality, but there's an inherent sort of a portrait or lens that you're putting it through, a window.
I have to relate to finding those tapes because I recently realized like I still have the same energy with the camera now that I did when I first picked up the camera. And that was like filming family members, friends. So when I'm working on a documentary, like there's this responsibility to just present the talent accurately. And what I try to do is just gain a sense of trust with them so that the camera eventually disappears. And I'm not trying to like punch up anything or be suggestive. I'm not using zooms, which is tough because, you know, that's like
You're shooting on primes?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
because I think also what I'm begging for in media is like a sense of patience. We went from like 15, 20 second cuts to like 3 seconds where things are just hitting you. And all those old movies we love, like you would sit on a frame forever. And I've found that with a prime, if I move my body, that's telling the audience that something's really going on if the editor uses it. Also, once that trust is built and the talent feels free, they may come close to me. And that also translates body language and emotional relationship developing or a certain accuracy of that talent. And I just want the talent to portray themselves accurately. And I want to be that person that can capture it accurately as well.
Yeah. Jackson, you had something?
Yeah. No, it's in documentary. It can be tough when you're telling a story. You want to be honest with your audience. With Seized, there's a lot of themes we explore about ethics and journalism. And so when you're exploring those things, you don't want to mislead your audience or be too stylized, right? You want to present the facts, but you don't want to be too objective either. You really want to try to get your audience immersed in the story and what your characters are feeling. So in those moments, you do have to make subjective choices that help your audience understand what someone's feeling in a moment. So like in the instance of Seized, there's the editor, Eric, of the newspaper. There's a moment in an interview where he talks about being in the room with his mother when she dies. And so it's a really heavy moment. And so, we could sit there and have the camera, listen to him, and that can be a really profound, amazing moment in itself. But we really felt like we wanted to just to get closer to that feeling. So what we did was we went over to his home, where his mother's room was, and we had him go in there and sit in there, and we were just really intentional with the way that we used light in that space and the way that we shot it, just to try to convey some of that weight and that sorrow that he felt in that moment. And I think having that play alongside him talking about losing her in that moment, it really just kind of helps put you like in his frame of mind in that moment. So I think being subjective can be good. It helps immerse your audience in what's going on.
How do you find those kind of opportunities? Like I was in my mother passed away in my parents' bedroom, and every time I go back to my house, it's there. I think my dad's okay because he lives there, but I only visit. How do you find those kind of opportunities where it's sort of the time, the place, the emotion? Like how do you seek that out?
Yeah, so it was really pretty amazing. We went in there and we kind of we wanted to shoot some stylized stuff in there, not necessarily with Eric in there, but just some stuff that she had in the room. She had a cane in there, and she had an old telephone that a landline that had buttons that was like 911, and had Eric's face on one of the buttons. She was 98 years old. So she had all these buttons, and so there was just a lot of things that were very much her in this room that we wanted to start capturing, and we stylized it in a little bit of a way that kind of had that portrayed that feeling of like that weight and sorrow feeling. And so we kind of set that tone in that room, and then Eric was just kind of existing, somewhere else in the house, and then we asked him to come in and just sit in that room on the bed in that kind of space that we had kind of, in that tone that we had kind of created. And then just naturally being in there in that space, he just kind of, we could just kind of see him just kind of like fall in. And we didn't tell him to do it. We didn't tell him what we were doing. We didn't say that we were shooting something to go with this, the segment where he was talking about his mother. We just set this space, and he came in there and he just kind of fell into that, and just kind of naturally, like his energies kind of naturally fit in with the tone we'd set. And so it was a really cool moment that we caught.
And actually piggybacking off of that in the place and the time, how did that play into your work, Jessica, of choosing how to show? I mean, how many hours of footage did you have on that project, and what was it like fitting it?
This was the least amount of footage I've ever had to work with. We had like 4.5 hours, which is its own issue. It's like I'm used to docs with like hundreds of hours of footage, if not thousands, and that gives you infinite possibilities. Having such a finite amount of footage is a different challenge. So it was good. Like I love my director Tamara. I think she's like a good vision. And oftentimes in documentary, I find sometimes it's thrown onto the editor to find the story. This was a real collaboration where she had an idea and I was able to execute, like she wanted it to feel raw. She wanted it to feel like we just live there. Like I said, we tried some interviews, we tried putting her VO in, we tried a few things, and every time we tried to overcomplicate this, it didn't work. It worked in the most simplified form that we could do it. Write it on screen, go to the thing, like give the least amount of context we can to give you what you need. And I think it was all memory. It's all, it just makes you, like, it's a visceral film. And watch it premiered last night, and I had never seen it projected, and actually projected, you think you're at the concert because of her angle. You're like watching them like you would if you were in the front row of the concert. And so some of the audience and stuff spoke about that and how they felt like they were really there, And so I think for my film, it was really about restraint, like I said, and just like making you feel like you're at a concert. It was really that simple.
And did anybody get a chance to see her film last night? Yeah, back here in the back. It's good. It's great. How do you leave space? I mean, with that minimal, and I have to apologize. My Sundance tradition is I lose my voice, so I'm going to grab my water in a second. How do you leave space for the audience to come to their own interpretations? I mean, with that limited amount of footage, it feels like.
Well, this one's different. I'd say there's other documentaries where that's a more difficult process. Like, I think this is like, since it's a visceral piece that's supposed to just like invoke a period of time, like great concert footage from bands that everyone loved at that time. Like, it does, so you don't have to push it in any direction. It can just live there, and you can take from it what you will in that way. Like, a lot of people just feel like I'm back in '96, where, I did a documentary. Last time I was here with a documentary about Benazir Bhutto of Pakistan. And that was difficult in the sense of like, okay, I have many sides to the story, and I know which one I think is happening, but now I'm presenting to a lot of people like, how was she assassinated? Who did it? Am I implicating Musharraf? Who am I, like her husband was implicated, to be honest. There's a lot, and so like, and who am I shaping with these with this narrative? And so in that case, Benazir's niece is very opposite, like anti everything Benazir does. And we interviewed her, and I put that in the doc. And I didn't give you any conclusions. I just put what I heard and gave it back to you. Now, it was a doc about Pakistan, so I also wanted to make it entertaining. I wanted it palatable to people. So like, we did use music. We did use a lot of stylization, and use like risk maps to like explain to you where you are. And we're dealing with names like General Zia-ul-Haq, and so I used a dossier so you could really see who this person was and like introduce him in a way that that an American audience could understand what was happening. And but within that, there's a responsibility of how I'm going to present AFPAC, Afghanistan, Pakistan, what's going on there. So I got criticized for this a little bit because people would say, well, who's right? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm presenting you the facts.
You don't know all the answers,
yeah.
Jessica?
I don't know who killed her. And so I presented both sides of the story as well as I could.
Yeah. And let's talk to Daysha and Davis real quick. AI is such a spooky word. How do you make sure that your film's about a father dealing with this sort of future, correct? So how do you balance the emotional side of that, of the unnerving qualities of the potential future, with the actual sort of data or experience? I mean, it's a pretty subjective movie, correct?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. You talk about like figuring out what do you say, what's your opinion of it? And that's kind of one of the biggest problems that we had with this AI doc, because, everybody out there right now is thinking about AI, and they, people have an opinion about whether it's good or bad, and whether, we should be using it and incorporating it into every aspect of our life, or we should be like regulating it out of existence or whatever. And our approach, the filmmakers, the directors, and the producers' approach was to just, cast a wide net and talk to as many people as we could who were experts. So Daniel and Charlie and the rest of the team are out there talking to the people that actually invented this technology and the fundamental technology underneath it, the people that are running these huge companies that are pushing it into our lives, the journalists that are writing about it. And so these people know a lot more about the topic than I do.
Yeah.
And, so as we're putting this sort of essay of the film together, like, we have to be very careful about what we say and about what these people say. And there's like a very strong responsibility of like journalistic ethics to make sure that we're representing what these people have said in such a way that it won't get the film in trouble, that, we don't want to be criticized for misrepresenting people. But we also need to find a way to create a conversation about it that works. And that is really difficult because it becomes very esoteric and academic. And so when I first heard about this project, which was underway, Daysha had already been working on it for months, and I heard that the idea was that Daniel, the director, and Charlie, the other director, had both had kids, and that they were kind of looking at this issue through the lens of what is the world going to be like for my child. I identified with that immediately because I have two young kids. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old now, and I see all this news about AI every day, and I'm like, what are my kids going to do when they grow up? Like, all the jobs that are out there are going to be different jobs if they're even there. Yeah. So, I had a lot of anxiety about it going into it. So it was very easy to just, slip into that world and start to really think critically about it and become invested in that content. And I think that is kind of what allowed us to put a relatively intelligent conversation together about it.
Yeah, I think we both were very anxious about the future. I think everybody involved was really anxious about the future. When I came onto the project, I had a very long 3-hour meeting with Dan Kwan and Daniel Rohr and Charlie and the producers of the film, and we just sat and discussed the world in a way where it's always kind of felt like the end of the world has happened a few times in every generation. There's something that happens that feels like, oh, this is it. Yeah. He was talking about the Holocaust, and he was talking about people ducking under desks in high school because they thought nuclear weapons were coming. I grew up in Compton, and I was young when the Rodney King riots happened, and my whole neighborhood was burnt to the ground. And I thought that was the end of the world because I was a kid, and I was looking at things as if, well, if everything's gone, if my aunt's travel agency is gone, what are we going to do? And I think that they kind of pitched it to me in that way. And how through all of those things, we've always found a way through as human beings, as people who, when things go really bad, we always seem to find a way to come together and go, okay, how do we fix this, and how do we get through this together? And Daniel Kwan also mentioned to me, like, he was like, there's a difference between intellectual people, intelligence, and wisdom. And it's like, you can be very intelligent and make this machine learning, and we can learn from everything that Google and all the data has taught this one machine, but who has the wisdom to use it in the correct way? And that's kind of what the movie is tackling. It's like, there's 5 guys that run all of this. It's just 5 guys. Yeah. And how do we hold them accountable and make them responsible for things? And because we aren't the people running it, but we are the people who have children and nephews and nieces, and we're concerned about how they're going to grow up in this thing. And so, yeah, that for me, it was really hard to be actually objective because I would be cutting segments and be like, yeah, and this is bad, and this is bad, and look at what it's doing over here, and we should really reel in on this, and it's like, but you're right, it's like, I don't know a lot about how this thing is made, who is wielding it, why, and avenues in which to make it a concern for everyone, just to make sure that because it's a universal concern. It's not something that just affects Daniel or me or Charlie or Davis. It's going to affect everyone. And so I was like, the biggest thing was to be objective, just to be like, here are all the facts. Like you said, here's all the facts. Like, what are we going to do about it? Because we don't have all the answers, but we can at least present the information to people who are looking for, because I know a lot of people are looking for more information on what this actually is.
I wonder if you guys had to deal with this too. Something I would just like to add with the political doc would be the same thing. The competing agendas of the people you're interviewing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
And taking that into account as you like present what they're saying.
And what's your check system for keeping a balance? Like, how do you find neutrality in those moments where it's pulling you one way or another, but it's your job to, present all the facts?
Yeah, I step back.
Yeah.
I have to, I cut something and then I step back. I go for a walk. I talk to my assistant about it. And then I go back and look at it again. Because in the moment when you're like really in something and you're cutting something, you can start to, it's different when you're doing something like my other film, because it's a narrative feature and my director wants specific things for his film. It's his vision, and I'm here to help execute it and provide ideas, etc. But with this, it is very much like, I have a nephew and I'm very concerned about his life. And so I would cut things in a way that I did feel I would go back to it and watch it and go, okay, I'm leaning a little too more, because there are the people we interviewed, the people in the AI world, in that space, you can divide them between the doomers, the people who think, this is going to kill us all, and we're, it's going to be like the Terminator, and like there's people who really feel like that who work in those spaces, and then there's the are they called optimists?
Well, we call them
we call them that, but
accelerationists.
Accelerationists, they want things to go faster than they are already going, and so it was a challenge to break those things up.
Yeah, and it's, I think when you're exposed to both sides, you start to see that they have a lot in common.
Right.
And yeah, have you ever had an argument with someone and then afterwards you're like, it was going well, and then I just shouldn't have said this. That's kind of that's sort of the process. We put these scenes together and we take a step back, we watch them together as a team, and we're making the point. We don't need this guy to say this.
Right. Yeah.
Like, this line can come out. It's just going to piss people off.
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately what we're trying to do is create a conversation that pulls as many people in to this as possible. Because, we're all wondering about it, but we need to know what are the questions that we should ask. And we need as many people as possible to start thinking about it, and not to just stick their heads in the sand and be like, well, that's happening. It's going to come. It's going to be on my phone. It's going to be in everything I use, and there's nothing I can do about it. And if that's our attitude, then it won't. We won't have any voice in how it's shaped and how it's used. So that's what we were trying to
because
accomplish.
the people who are shaping it don't have that attitude. Just an FYI, they're very every day working on it. So we have to be doing that too.
Yeah, in a way, I think Jessica, your film's a little bit of an anomaly because it's a slice of life, but your guys' films is sort of like it's you're talking about the leaders, right? Are these the people we want to be the leaders of this thing, which is potentially, culturally changing, earth changing, society changing, all of these things? And then Jackson and Bryan, your guys' films is all it's kind of about speaking truth to power in a way, or it's about holding power accountable, or at least showcasing it in a way that the audience can assess it for themselves. How did that work into your work, Bryan, on the shooting of your film?
You mean
like what angles did you find while working on the film, or did you have to pivot, or how do you maintain that objectivity?
Yeah,
while also knowing that you want to reflect a truth, or do some sort of expose without being challenging.
The truth made it clear to us after that first interview. I think we had the option of choice and styling and things like that. We had plenty of conversations about it beforehand, but after that first interview, hearing and just dealing with that amount of loss, it became clear that, you know, the responsibility here is to respect them and to just capture it. Like, the story can stand on its own. It didn't need me to help guide it anywhere. My job was to be a respectful party and allow them to tell their story, right? And then I trust the journalistic integrity of my director and editor to do the rest. But, you know, just stripping back, you know, we were like, oh, well, this is a terrible story. We had our own ideas. And then when we speak to other people involved in the film, which you'll see, you just, I don't want to give too much away. Like, you almost feel like this tragedy that you can understand based on just these talent alone, and now you're realizing that, no, this is a tragedy for everyone involved, right? So then it balances your idea of how to tell that story. So if you're going into it thinking like, oh, this guy's terrible, by the end you're just like, wow, it's really like, this is destruction across the board. So I don't need to increase contrast here. I don't need to do any lighting things. I just need to be there and be responsible enough to gain their trust so that they can be themselves, and then allow the director to guide what they're sharing with the audience and let the audience really see them like who they are.
And what do you hope people take away from your film?
Law and order can be a good thing, but maybe we need to just make sure that it's being disseminated properly. Maybe we need to look into how to check to make sure. We need to add more checks and balances, because that amount of power can have destructive results to entire communities, you know. And we need to, I mean, what are we experiencing in the country right now? Like, I'm proud of myself and everyone here just for like trying to find some light in the world at the moment. So maybe I hope that they see this and just go, okay, this is not just another, you know, drama about a terrible situation, but maybe, you know, I understand how this happened, and there's things I can do in my community to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Yeah. Jackson, what do you think? What do you hope people take away?
Oh, from what they take away from our film? Well, yeah, it really relates to what Bryan was talking about, and that there are these people in power that, you know, if we don't have people putting them in check, that they'll just run crazy, right? And so what we explore and seize is that it's important to have journalists. It's important to allow them to speak and to hold people accountable. But at the same time, I don't want to give too much away, but there's a lot of, you know, who also holds the journalists accountable, you know, because they don't always speak the full truth as well. So that's kind of the interesting depth of the story, is that there's a lot of history that led up to the raid. And so when you just look at it kind of broadly, you're like, oh, the damn police, they raided this newspaper, and yes, that was terrible. But when you look at, you know, how the editor of the newspaper approached journalism in a small town where everybody knows each other, you can understand why some people might want to raid his newspaper. And again, that's not saying that it was warranted. It just gives some context to the story, and I think that's what we really tried to do in this film was just try to ground this film in this community and be with these characters and with these people, so that you could see, you can understand them more, and then you could understand how this raid happened. And so we shot a lot on primes too, Bryan, and I totally agree with you. It really just it encourages the camera to engage with this space in a way that mirrors how we as people engage with our reality, right? If you want to see something better, you walk over to it. You don't have the luxury of zooming in and out. While we did shoot on zooms as well when we needed to, but we kept that same framework of like keep the camera engaged with the story, to try to like keep it curious and try to learn more about the people and the story.
Yeah. And it allows for more context. You know, it's, again, if you can hold a medium and display where their environments and everything, and again, like I said, there's nothing more powerful than seeing someone walk up to the camera and expose themselves, their own choice to do so. And another thing is just like, that's why I think documentary, especially now, is so powerful, because if we look at traditional media, not all outlets, but a lot of those traditional places where you would find information, trustworthy information, they're going the way of chasing advertising dollars and trying to compete with TikTok and all the new things. And where, your stories are running, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. A documentary is a well thought out, methodical opportunity and a vehicle to speak power to truth, which is why I just really try to stay away from, I have a music video background, narrative background. I could like with the best of them, but I really just try to make sure that at this point, as I mature in this position, how can I use my technical skills to just, expose properly? It gets a little easier when you think about it that way. There's an opportunity for some color and things, but I like presenting it just actual, like this is what it was. You make up your own mind.
Yeah, Daysha, what do you hope people take away?
From the AI doc?
Yeah, from AI. Yeah.
I think kind of what Davis was saying was that we can't kind of just stick our head in the sand on this one, because it's if not checked. And what's interesting is a lot of people who are making this thing want it to be checked. They're like asking the government to check them, and it's not happening. But if not checked, it's already influencing our lives so much on a daily basis. But it's seeped into the criminal justice system. It's seeped into whether or not someone is going to be qualified for Medicare and things like that. Like they're now using AI for things like that. And I feel like it's not something that we can see as the big bad and scary, because then we will try to run away from it. In our heads, at least, just mentally, we'll try to go, I can't think about that right now because I have all of these other things on my plate. And it's not something that we can do that with. And there's so many things in the world right now that need our attention. And I think this one is it's going to be detrimental, and I think everyone needs to at least continue to pay attention to it. And I don't think the movie tries to tell you what to do, which is what I like about it. It offers ways to get involved, but I think everyone kind of has to look at themselves and go, what can I do? Instead of seeing it. I think, we grew up with these movies that were like, we knew this was going to happen. And it's like, technically, yeah. And, some of those things are the model for what's happening, is those people who are making it grew up at the same time we did. And, maybe they modeled some of this after that. But if we look at it that way, it makes it too scary to confront. And I hope that the film gives people the courage to confront this and a lot of other things about their lives.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen Jurassic Park. We know what happens when the dinosaurs get out, right? Davis, what do you think the takeaway is from the AI doc?
Yeah, I agree with what you said already. I think we all were worried about what social media was doing, and it just sort of did what it did, and we're still dealing with it today, and that's just. I think we need to be more engaged when we deal with these big tech companies that are only going to become more and more powerful. And the one thing that I know will happen because of AI is that these tech companies will become more powerful and more wealthy, and that power will be further consolidated. So, I was going to point out there's already AI is being used to create sentencing recommendations for judges. It's if we're not careful, we will give up a lot of our agency to these systems. And I think that especially creative people like us, artists, need to be careful and need to be thoughtful about how we use this technology, because it's they say it's going to take away all the hard work and make our lives easy. But what it's doing is it's doing all the cognitive work right now. It's doing the cognitive labor for us. And that's not going to make us smarter. It's not going to make us more creative. Like, that's the kind of work that needs to be done by people and by humans. And there's nothing wrong with incorporating new technologies into your workflows, but don't let it take your humanity with you. Like, don't lean on it to become, to be who it is that we're trying to be. Like, we are telling the stories, and we need to keep being the storyteller.
Jessica, how about your film?
Well, I hope mine is a little bit of a happy light in this moment. It does harken back to a time without phones and without a lot of tech. And the other thing is, Tamara and I made this in my office, in my bedroom or in my office space in my house. And, one thing I really admire about her is many, many years ago, she told the story about how she was fired from a film. And the person was like, "You're not a filmmaker." And she said, "I have a camera. Yes, I am." And kept filming. And she grabbed a camera and took it to Somersault. And so what takeaway is grab a camera.
Cool. Well, I'd like to thank all of our panelists. I'd like to thank Impact 24 for setting up this event and all of our sponsors here at Behind the Camera House. So Bryan, Davis, Daysha, Jackson, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.